Welcome back to Work, Love, Pray, Real Talk Grounded in Truth. I'm Jordan Johnstone. What is the first thing you feel when someone compliments you? How do you first feel when someone corrects you or offers constructive criticism? How we process what others think of us is heavily influenced by what we think of ourselves. Maybe you thought your time in quarantine would be a great opportunity to work on self-care and getting more in tune with yourself. But did you actually do that? Or did you just stamp self-care across sitting in front of Netflix or for, let's be honest, the majority of your quarantine days? Self-perception is not a mystic term. It's a massive part of learning how to grow in so many areas of your life, which means it's something you should dedicate the next half hour or so to hearing more about from someone who lives and breathes helping people discover what makes them tick and how they can be the best version of themselves. Jessie Niespolo has spent over 15 years within the automotive marketing industry, with the last 7 years as a senior strategy lead on Google's automotive retail team. In addition to her work on the auto vertical, Jessie has a passion for helping women reach their full potential. She currently acts as the America's site lead for Google's I Am Remarkable initiative and leads the Google Women Detroit chapter, where she brings programs to the Detroit office that are focused on women empowerment. Outside of Google, Jessie is the co-founder of Forward Detroit and is actively involved in Hope Water International, an organization that participates in athletic events to raise money for clean water in Africa. And actually, Jessie has held the only female board seat on Hope Water International's board since 2018. Jessie is married to her high school sweetheart, and together they are raising 4 children and co-leading a local Detroit marriage mentorship group. So she's got a few things going on, but she is by far the best person to be talking with us today about self-perception. So Jessie, I am so thankful that you are here with us today.
Jordan, I'm so excited for the opportunity. It is, when you were reading that, I was like, oh, I maybe should say no more. No, it is, I'm a true believer in make a dent where you're sent, and God has really just blessed me with opportunities to be able to come and share what he's doing in my life. And so I'm super excited to be here with you today.
Awesome. Well, I don't think it's too surprising that to kick off our month-long conversation, we want to talk about self-perception. So for today's conversation, I would love for you to kind of kick things off and share your personal definition of self-perception.
Jordan, I love this question, and I love the topic, clearly. When I think of self-perception, what I really think about is really understanding one's value and identity, and then taking all imposter syndrome voices in our head aside and being confident in sharing that with others. As a Christian, I think that comes easier for us, as I've done a lot of work in the general population in this arena, because as Christians, we're constantly working to know whose we are, which I'm a daughter of a king and I'm unconditionally loved by him. But as we go beyond that and really focus on what gifts does God give me and what value do they bring, I'm able to then be more confident in who I am and my self-perception. So I mentioned, as a Christian, that comes more natural. When I'm working with the general population on this topic of how remarkable each individual is, I really want them to take the time to think about their gifts and what makes them proud or what makes them happy, whether that's at work or at home, and then really practice like a muscle, building that mindset shift so their self-perception is strong and confident.
Yeah. So how did you come to that definition, especially the idea of being open to sharing your value with others?
Yeah, I am a true believer and advocate. That's part of my mission or my purpose statement, is to really encourage others, especially women, to bring their whole selves to whatever environment they're in. This concept of no mask. So whoever you are at home, make sure you're bringing that same person to the work environment. Because what ultimately, as you heard through my bio, I'm balancing a lot of hats. So I lead a big role at Google. I've been blessed with this opportunity to lead the hashtag I Am Remarkable initiative for the Americas in the last year, which we'll talk more about later. But then I come home and I have 4 kids right now. We actually have one on the way. So, there's a lot of great, good, and ugly that comes with all of that. So knowing that this is a big mission of mine, I have been really taking the time to continuously develop in this area. So taking trainings that help me to be bold, help me to build that strength or that bravery and being confident in who I am. And about 5 years ago, I actually participated in the Google workshop, #IamRemarkable, as one of my training and developments. And the whole goal of that program is to encourage women or underrepresented groups, so basically anyone who's a minority in a situation, to speak openly about their accomplishments, whether that be in the workplace or beyond, and really kind of continue to be aware of what those accomplishments are. And so when I took that training where I really pride myself in being bold, I was realizing, there's still some work to do here, God. You're continuing to peel the onion back of, I'm not always walking that talk. And so I Am Remarkable has just really become a platform where I haven't been able to build, but then encourage others to build in this area.
Okay, so let's talk more about that program. Let's talk about the initiative, because I feel like, because you and I kind of talked about it a little bit before, it ties in so closely with what we're talking about today. So just share a little bit about that. Share maybe how our listeners could get involved with it.
Yeah, it's a Google initiative that launched in 2015, actually originating out of our Europe team, which is just amazing to have some best practices coming more over to the Americas, where it's really growing now. And the whole goal, like I said before, was we identified that this was a socially driven concept, that it was harder for women in underrepresented groups to self-promote. We noticed it in boardrooms, we've noticed it in social circles, and we really wanted to bring something to the marketplace that could enable both internal Googlers, but external people as well, to help build this muscle. So it's a 90-minute workshop. We run it in, now that we're a virtual world, in a million different formats, in a different, various different sizes. The listeners can actually go, if they Google #IamRemarkable, they'll be able to find the website. But we do it for customers. So a lot of the internal Googlers are focused on either running workshops internally or with large customers and partners. And then we also offer this for external individuals to become trainers of the program. So for myself, for example, like I've done them for large corporations, or I've done them for my local Forward chapter, right? We have a lot of like coaches or people that are just passionate to be able to go to our website and get involved. So it's really a global movement. The workshop to itself is broken out into 3 sections. So we start with the why this is so important, bring awareness of like why we need to really focus here. And then with Google being a big data company, we partner with a lot of third parties on the research to really prove that this isn't, I think we'll talk about this too, imposter syndrome. Like this is definitely something that is hard for us to do as women or anybody in the minority. And then we do some practice, so real life skills. It's been a movement. We have grown. I can't believe even in a virtual world, we had to pivot. We used to only be in person pre-pandemic, and we had to pivot quickly, and we did. And I actually love it, delivering them virtually. I feel people are even more vulnerable in sharing and open. And we've hit over 200,000 participants, over 800 countries. So it's really, it doesn't matter if you do sit in the United States, this really affects everybody globally. So that's a little bit about the initiative.
Well, and it's funny, Forward kind of had to do the same type of pivot with the community groups. Once pandemic hit and we went, we can't actually get together anymore, we pivoted to virtual, and it was such a hit to the point that like we're actually going to probably continue that. I think we've heard of a lot of community groups saying that they like that, and it was kind of for the same reason that you're saying it's been working out for Google, because women in New York can join something in California and meet those women that they probably would have never been able to before. But so it's a cool thing. I like virtual. I hope it doesn't go away.
Well, I do enjoy virtual as well, and we have found the same thing with our Forward Detroit chapter. We continue to grow and have new people every month at our monthly meetings. Now that things are starting to open back up a little bit in Michigan, we're going to keep virtual virtual, but introduce a in-person option once a month. So that'll help meet the need of everyone's schedule so that they can kind of attend when they can or where they feel most comfortable. So I do get tired. I get video conferencing fatigue through the days, but I do, it is helpful with balancing all the things that God has in front of us.
Oh yeah. Okay. Another thing too. I love Googlers. Like, is that seriously what you guys,
I know.
y'all call each other? That's awesome.
We have a secret language. We always laugh. I have to watch myself about, we speak in acronyms. We speak in acronyms a lot. And so I had to, it is a joke, a running joke. You'll be on with a client, especially in auto, and they'll be like, wait, what was that? And I was like, oh, for example, if you're familiar, spreadsheets, everybody knows Microsoft Excel spreadsheets. Well, we have Google Sheets, a Google version. We call them Trixes. So it's and so I have to watch myself. Oh, it's in the Trix. And my husband will be like, what? The Trix?
Oh, now, okay, I want to take a break for a second. Let's talk about, or have you share how you even got connected with Google, because it's kind of a cool story.
Yes, it is. It is a cool story, and definitely all God. So I, as you mentioned in my bio, I had been working in automotive marketing since I graduated from Michigan State. I did a little stint in London where I had an international business internship, but then I came back and finished. And about, I don't know, I guess how many years into my career was it? It was about 9 years into my career. I had always been really focused on, I'm really excited about the next movement or the next evolution of marketing. And when I started out, we were really still traditional, and digital was still very new. So doing anything online was still very new. But I continued to move into those areas of digital transformation. And I was actually pregnant with my second daughter, and they called me for an interview, which is slightly unheard of, to be honest. I think they found me on LinkedIn just because the area of focus in my career was so niche that, and I came in 7 months pregnant with Eliana, and we did the interview, and it went really, really well. But there was a candidate that was stronger than me. And so I was just really excited that I got the opportunity to interview at Google. I went along, had my baby, and the recruiter said she was going to call me after I had Eliana. And to my surprise, she actually did. And I went back in for an interview and then ended up starting there when Eliana was 4 months. And so it's just been amazing platform, again, with that concept of make a dent where you're sent, where I've been able to be bold. Google is a really big company of empowering you to be who you are in any circumstance. And knowing that my faith is my number one force, I've been really bold about that. And then getting to be a part of platforms like I Am Remarkable lets me be even more open about that. So it's been really, really exciting.
Yeah. Well, and something like that, that's a huge experience to go through. And I know for me personally, and I'm sure that there's plenty in our audience that would feel this way too, that we mentioned that imposter syndrome, that would start to kick in real bad.
Yes.
Yes. Because you even said, there was somebody that was more qualified, you thought than you were. And so, I mean, we've talked about imposter syndrome so much within the forward community, because it is something that it's so common. With. Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, and I feel like especially women, I know men can feel it too, but women, for whatever reason, we are just so prone to it. And, and it's sad, because I feel like we are affected by it, but we often feel like, we're kind of the only one feeling like, hey, I don't belong here. Why am I getting this job? Why am I getting this project? So, I mean, I'd love to hear, in that situation, did imposter syndrome pop up? Have you had to deal with imposter syndrome personally throughout your career?
I think that is a big concept that we talk about at Google. A lot of Googlers feel that way of imposter syndrome. I mean, you come to the table and you're working with the best of the best. Everyone is a top performer. Everyone is type A. So it's more natural to run into imposter syndrome. But that's why where I Am Remarkable and these trainings and these developments and these little tips have really helped to kind of keep that at bay.
Right.
One of my favorite taglines from the workshop is, it's not bragging if it's based on fact. So I'll say it one more time. It's not bragging if it's based on fact. And ultimately what that is telling us is that if we take the time, if we create the space to really think about what have we done, especially in relation to our careers or even our personal lives? What are our proudest accomplishments? Not attributes, accomplishments. And take the time. We realize those are all truth. Those are all fact. So why it helps to start to shift that mindset of like, oh, you didn't do that, or that's not for real. Like, it's truth. I earned that role at Google, or I earned that promotion, or I did drive X amount of millions of dollars in revenue, whatever that is for you. I am a kick butt mom. I make the best apple pie. These things are truth. So when we start to really document them and look at them and realize, oh, wow, I always get that reaction when I encourage women to do that. Then we start to be able to overcome that imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. Now, I won't say that it doesn't always speak up here and there, and I do have some ways of getting around that. One of my favorite things that I do is, knowing that I work at Google, I use a lot of Google Docs, which are living and breathing documents. But every time I have I call them HR worthy moments or performance rating moments or things that I just did at work that I was like, wow, that was a really exciting opportunity. I jump into this doc, I don't even think about it, and then I mark down that event. And knowing that a lot of us and a lot of our listeners are career women, probably over type A overachievers, we get into these moments of oh my gosh, I'm not doing anything right. I'm not accomplishing anything. And so what I do is I jump back into that document and I'll be like, hey, I am really making progress. I am really making impact. And it's just a nice reminder to have that. But one key thing I want to talk about, Jordan, in regards to imposter syndrome is that socially driven part too. Mm-hmm. Our research at Google verifies that imposter syndrome is a lie.
Right.
It really is. There's a study that we have done in partnership with Catalyst that's a 20-year-old study. So 20 years ago, a study found that self-promoting women were seen to be less competent, less socially attractive, and less hireable than self-promoting men. Since then, further research has confirmed that this is still the case.
Wow.
So, we've made a ton of progress as women in the workplace, but this area of not being confident and not being able to have strong self-perception continues to need work. And then cultural expectations for women to be modest, maybe more strongly defended by women than by men. So what this is saying is that even women don't like when women self-promote. And
Right.
And
they see it as a threat.
Yes, and we really need to change that mindset, encourage others so we can continue to build that self-perception.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you seem to be a very confident person. So, how would you mentor someone, let's say, who they've got a big interview coming up, maybe it is with Google or, it's with some, big, huge company that everybody aims for, but they're already going into it going why am I doing this? Why did I get this? I don't deserve this. How would you mentor them? How would you help them approach that and kind of redefine their self-perception a little bit going into something like that?
Perfect. Well, I would tell them to breathe. I would take a moment of breath for sure. I have a big, I believe we opened up in prayer, and it was just a way to recenter. We do a lot of kicking off meetings. Especially when there's nerves involved. At Google around we call it arrival practice, where we'll take a couple minutes to breathe, especially in a virtual world where there's not that break between meetings. Yeah. And so I would first breathe. The second thing I would tell them to do is let's create that space and just really go through what you've done. Let's take that minute to write the 10 things that come to your mind first that are remarkable or that you're proud of, and let's try to focus them around career. So what I find is as we do that, and then we start to look at line item by line item, our confidence continues to grow because we can actually see the truth on paper. Yeah. So that's where I would have them begin, and then start to prepare for their interviews, highlighting how they first, what was the project or what was the thing that they accomplished? Yeah. How did they get there? And then what were the results and what would they do different? Yeah. But this helps. It's a muscle. We say that a lot at Google. You have to keep practicing, and you have to hold yourself accountable. You can't just go into an interview with that nervousness on your shoulders, without really knowing the truth and praying on that truth.
Yeah. When you were sitting there talking about like, owning your accomplishments, owning what you've done. Again, this is probably just my personality. You almost like automatically think about that. And then the guilt or like, the uncomfortableness of like, oh, I need to brag, and it's not bragging. I mean, you're stating a fact. I mean, if you've done something, so, I mean, like, why do you think those emotions come up? Like, where did we get ingrained in us that if you say that you've done something well, you're bragging, or, you shouldn't be doing that because you're drawing attention to yourself. You shouldn't have attention.
In terms of, thinking about that, we get that response a lot. I've gotten that response a lot across many different industries, always the same. I want to say that the team has done this, or, and that I didn't really do that. It was the whole team or the group of people. Right. And I'm all about being humble. So I do think there is a subtle art of like stating our accomplishments, but in a way that makes others feel encouraged or inspired to do the same. Yeah. So I think it first takes bravery, honestly, and just in practice. So another thing that I have done, I actually have a buddy. I call her my fast forward buddy, because we ultimately took another training called Fast Forward, which is a phenomenal training if you're not aware of it, listeners to go out and check into. But one of those things is talking about accountability. And so her and I, she doesn't even work at Google anymore. She works for a startup, have a monthly meeting on the calendar where we meet and we hold each other sacred to sharing with each other what has been going on from a career perspective in our lives and really talking about how we contributed to them. So for me, it's definitely been that idea of practice and continuing to practice with somebody that makes me vulnerable, so that when I get into more larger group situations, I'm able to do that. One thing too is accomplishments don't speak for themselves, especially when we're thinking about our careers. I know that I have fallen trapped to this before, that I work so hard. I maintain a high work ethic. I mean, my manager should just know what I'm doing and see what I'm doing. But that even gets harder in a virtual world where, like, yes, they see the inbox coming through, but it's hard to really show one's value that way if we're not making sure that we're checking in regularly on those accomplishments and those progress, if we're working towards a promotion, for example. And if we don't, what we've seen, again, with data and research at Google, is that you'll ultimately fall behind your peers. Right. So, because there is others that are more confident in this area. And so I would say practice makes perfect in this environment.
Yeah. Well, before we go, is there anything else you want to share?
I think the biggest thing is really taking that time to reflect. I think you said it great at the beginning of the podcast of, we've had this time, and what have we really taken it, proactively to really take that time to do self-care. And this is something that's really simple. It can be a 5-minute reminder on your calendar to just, in the last 10 days, what am I most proud of, or what did I do? So I think it's really about when you start to feel overwhelmed, when you start to feel that voice in your head saying that you're not doing well enough or you did not do that, really try to silence it. I mean, as Christians, we silence it with prayer, but really try to silence it, and then really start to write down those factual things so that you can remind yourself that you are doing a good job.
Well, thanks so much for joining me for this conversation with Jessie. For more information about today's episode, just go to forwardwomen.org/Jessie. That's the number 4, WORDWOMEN.org/JESSIE. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe to Work, Love, Pray on your favorite listening platform and leave us a review. Your review will help more people discover Work, Love, Pray, so your feedback is greatly appreciated. As you move forward on your journey to work, love, and pray well, don't forget to make time for real talk grounded in truth.